Hey, how are you doing? I am fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, it's only Tuesday, so yes, that is true. That is true. There we go. Now I can hear you now wondering what still nothing. That's weird because I'm hearing you. I'm
Haha,
hearing you.
that's what happened.
What was wrong?
OBS.
Oh, that's such a more complicated system than it needs to be. I don't know
It is.
why.
It's so much more complicated than it needs to be. No, somehow, I don't know how, my microphone setting got changed in OBS.
It's what I still can't get my. I don't go through OBS to get my video because I it's still a camera that I borrowed from a friend that I no longer use because I don't have it anymore. It still wants to hook into that one. I'm like, it does not exist.
Right, it's not even there. That's not what I want you to grab. Don't grab that. You don't need
I
that.
cannot find the printer. The printer's right there. Why can't I can find the printer?
Ugh, technology. It's great when it works, right?
Yeah. That's why I'm really not worried about like robots,
We're not.
because they would try to dominate the world, and little safety pin or paperclip would come jump up saying, "I see you're trying to take over the world. Do you need some help with that?"
You need some help with
No,
that.
Clippy.
Oh, come on, stop it. The what was it? All the different things that were written by like neural networks and AIs, and it's like, nah, we're fine, we're safe,
We're
it's fine.
okay.
Don't worry about it.
If that's the best artificial intelligence can do, we're fine, really.
Really, we're fine. We're good. All right. Well, so let's start that again. Now
Yes.
that people can hear me. Yes. Hi. Hello. Welcome back to A&M Talk D&D. As
Yes.
always, I am the beloved and benevolent Ash King.
I'm just the weird guy named Michael.
that weird, that weird dude, Mister Michael
That's right.
Cross, over
I,
there.
I just likes to talk about D&D.
Right. We just talk about D&D. It's kind of what we do here. Hence the name of the show.
Yes.
But we are continuing our lovely little romp through Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Last week, if you weren't here with us, we started exploring chapter 3 of this lovely little book that is all of the different pre-made domains of dread. So these are the prefabricated ones that have been part of Dungeons and Dragons for a long time.
Right.
Let's just put it that way. I'm not sure exactly when each of these particular domains of dread were introduced. Some,
They're
were part of
various.
some were part of the
Yeah.
original Ravenloft campaign setting. Some, some might even be brand spanking new. Like I'm not sure. I haven't done my homework yet on that.
Yeah, I did a little bit, and it really kind of, and some of them are actual modules that came out either in second edition or 3.5, 3.5, and because of this, they've now become
they're now like
actual domains of dread.
official, like expanded
Right. Before
out.
they were just kind of their own little, as modules always
Mm-hmm.
were back then. There was no real setting because the whole idea Gary Gygax really wanted was that you could take this and put this in your own world, or you could take this and put it in Mystara, or you could take this and put it in Greyhawk or Dragonlance or whatever you wanted to do, because that's what he wanted. He wanted these modules to be independent. So you would find these modules. I don't know if Darkon, which we're going to talk about in just a bit. I think Darkon might have. No, it wasn't Darkon. It was.
Hold on, I've got a book for that.
I think it was Harakir. Was its own thing. Now, of course, I'm sure there's going to be people out there that are going to correct me and say that I'm wrong, and that's fine. But I think that there a lot of these were either part of Ravenloft in the olden times.
Boop-a-doop.
Many of them had been changed.
So this is one of my, one of the things in my collection that makes certain people just like scream in jealousy. One of my classic Ravenloft. This is Domains and Denizens.
Is that from 3.5?
No, my good sir. This is, beliefs. Let's see. Published. This is 94. So this would.
So that would be the second edition.
Second edition. Yeah. Yeah, and this actually does have. Yeah, so just looking down the list, we've got Barovia, Borka, Darkon, Dementliu, Falknovia, Forlorn, Hasland, Invidia, Kartakas, Keening, Lemordia, Markovia, Mordant, Nova Vasa, Reimlauch, the Sea of Sorrows, Sixthus, Tempest, Valakan, Verbeck. And then we also have the Islands of Terror, which are Blutspur, Dominia, Gehenna, Harakir, the Nightmare Lands, Rokushima Tayu, Sorange, Shriraj, and Zarisia.
So Harakir was part of the original. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And as of 94.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this, I mean, and that's fine. I think it's not unusual. There's been a lot of stuff that Wizards of the Coast has done that has taken past things and adapted them, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, I'm writing. This is my Saturday night group right now. This is what we are running, which I can't see myself. Yeah.
Is that the revised edition of Keep on the Borderlands?
It is. I have this one. I have Isle of Dread, and I have. Keep on the Borderlands. Barrier Peaks, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, which have all, because of Goodman Games, been adapted to 5th edition. And it's been so much fun running these young people through these games that they have never even thought of. Mm-hmm. This is all new and original to them, so nice. It's going to be, and it'll be really fun to take them through Barrier Peaks. So.
Right. I mean, that was always kind of my thing about, like, I have a very weird opinion about going back, I guess. I don't know, like, just re-releasing the same old stuff over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Like, I like it, and I can appreciate it from a standpoint of, like, that's cool to, like, update it for 5th edition.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't know, I just kind of feel weird about it. I'm like... Because there's so much that gets recycled anyways, we've kind of talked about, I don't know if we've, like, talked about it, like, just, like, pointing it out, basically, but, like, there's so many people who, like, I know you do it on occasion, is that you refer to Storm King's Thunder as Against the Giants.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of basically the same basic idea. Actually, I had a buddy, Charles, who he pointed it out to me and was like, okay, So everything that Wizards of the Coast had released for 5th edition, starting with Tyranny of Dragons, then going into Princes of the Apocalypse, Out of the Abyss, Storm King's Thunder, Curse of Strahd, Storm King's Thunder. He was literally able to predict Tomb of Annihilation.
Yeah.
Based off the pattern, because
Yeah.
they were technically releasing similar adventures to what had come before, but
Yeah.
like just different enough. And he was like, dude, I've already played all this stuff. Like, I'd like to see something like brand spanking new. And in some ways I do kind of agree with him, because it's just like they keep falling back on the nostalgia factor.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I didn't know about I knew that Tomb of Annihilation and Tomb of Horrors there was some kind of, but I didn't think about it. I was playing through Tomb of Annihilation, and we got to the final tomb, and we're going through the 3 entrances. Sorry, spoilers a little bit here.
spoiler
2
alert.
of those are not a good idea to go down. I can tell you that right now.
I still love the
But we go down them, and of course we get into the little trap thing, and we had to get out. And the whole time I'm going, this seems so familiar. I know this from. So where do I know
like
this from?
I've
Why
been
do
here
I know
before.
this?
What
We
is
go into
this?
one entrance, we
Where
have a
am I?
trap. We go into another entrance to the trap, and then you finally get to the other entrance, and you have to do this little path thing. I'm like, oh, this is Tomb of Horrors, and they're like, and the DM's like, well, yeah. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know that. So for me, it was kind of neat, because it's something I'd gone through as a child.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Tomb of Horrors backward and forward. Now it changes a lot.
Yeah.
Once you actually get in there, but
I know.
because Tomb of Horrors, now that I've read it or reread it, that's a horrible.
It's
module.
a beast of a module. It is a beast.
And
well,
it's not fun. It was fun when you were used to dying. But 5e is not a dying game. It's a superhero game.
yeah. Well, and then also, like, not only that, there were a handful of those modules that were written back in the day that actually were meant to be competition modules.
Right. That Barrier Peaks is one of those.
Yeah, the thing was, and the setup was that you would go to conventions, and they would run you through these modules. I think, if I remember right, you would build like 2 characters of a certain level, or there would be pre-gens there for you, and the goal was to get the farthest into the tomb before dying.
Yes.
And whichever party got the farthest into the tomb before everybody died was declared the winner.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, that explains a lot.
Yeah. Well, that was back when people died. I mean, the characters died, and when you hit 0 hit points, that was it. Short of running and hoping a cleric would somewhere, because you didn't have the power to do it in your own parties, some cleric somewhere would resurrect you, or even more horrifying is you would have a druid reincarnate you into a bunny. There was nothing you could do. You just died. You made a new character. Because
that's
it's
how it
really
worked.
easy to do. Yeah, but in 5e is not. Dying is really hard in 5e.
Preface: dying is really hard after level 2.
Right. Well, yes. Well, that's true. I did actually get killed.
Because I can attest, like, there have been so many tables that I've known that it's like level 1 is literally the hardest level, but like once you get past like level 1, level 2, then it's like, okay, I've got enough hit points, I can survive more than 1 hit.
Yes. And I almost TPK'd my Saturday night group on, they just ran into a were-rat and some rats. And they were first level.
Can I say a couple of bad rolls or one really lucky crit?
Yeah.
On a paladin.
Yeah.
Within the first 5 minutes of the game. Sorry, Jeff, I love you.
But it was even a lot easier back then. So when you nowadays though the healing is a lot different.
Every class has some sort of healing ability, almost. Yeah. I think rogues are like the only one that doesn't have one built into the class.
Yeah, and back then you got 1 hit point per 24 hours.
Oof.
Without any kind of normal healing. Just every 24 hours you might get 1 hit point back. And like, so now it's like this long rest and you're fine, short rest and you're groovy. Sorry, I just need to take a nap, and I'll be good to go.
I lay down right here, take a nap.
So, Domains of Dread. Uh, we left off last time on Darkon. We were just about to go into Darkon.
Yes.
Aslan Rex.
Aslan Rex. Oh my goodness.
My first question, I was going to ask who is Aslan Rex, but then I couldn't help but ask where is Aslan Rex?
Where is Aslan Rex? I like that. I like the fact that it's a domain of dread without a Dark Lord.
Yeah.
And so you've got it. So it's a fractured world. It's a prison. It's a prison without a prisoner, basically.
Right.
And if you're a prison without a prisoner, what purpose do you serve? And so the fact that literally the mists are starting to devour Darkon and basically reabsorb Darkon and all of the people of Darkon, that to me is far more interesting even than just like, yeah, okay, Aslan Rex, cool, awesome. Where is he? Who knows? No. I want to just know more about, like, you know, I want the story of the power struggle, of the power vacuum, that once the Dark Lord is gone, who's gonna take their place?
Yeah. I love the fact the writers probably thought the exact same thing. Let's have one of these domains be there's no Dark Lord. What do you do? And I think I love the fact that they took probably one of the most. I mean, certainly if they did Barovia and Strahd was gone, that would be huge. But they took one of the most highly recognized Dark Lords of Aslan Rex, and said, no, he's not going to be there anymore.
Goodbye.
Yeah, and it's a great little twist. There's a lot of great twists, and we talked about how these are all past stories. These are all past, but I think the writers did an excellent job of either updating them, certainly updating them to a 21st century, or telling their story now, what has happened since we last knew them.
To instead of just retelling the story, advancing the story, because that's something that I feel a lot of franchises are afraid to do nowadays.
Yeah,
is to let a story continue to advance and let the stakes continue to change instead of just resetting everything back to square one all over again. Cough, Spider-Man.
Oh, I was gonna go Star Wars. Star Wars.
No, Star Wars isn't so bad as long as you're not watching the movies.
The new trilogies. The new trilogy. Which basically was
It was second verse, same as the verse, but we're not going to get into that right now. We are not a Star Wars podcast, Mr. Cross.
And that's probably the reason, though. I think it's also because nostalgia. People are screaming and yelling for Dark Sun and for Dragonlance and for Greyhawk.
Planescape, Spelljammer.
Guys, those would all be wonderful, but you realize they're not going to be the thing you played with when you were a kid. Even if it was exactly word for word, it's not going to be the same thing because, as they say, you can never go home again. That's the reason. You will never be that person who played that game at that time. So, be careful what you wish for and Dragonlance is going to be coming out. I know they're working on it right now.
The rights battle finally
finally
ended.
So something's going to happen, and it just, all you guys who really want this really badly, just realize it might not be as Kistral.
Hi Kistral, welcome. You didn't, it's D&D with a dash of existentialism.
Oh yes. Just come right in with, you will never be the same person again.
I mean, we are talking about the domains of dread here, right? And part of dread definitely, like, I feel like you have to be a little navel gazy in order to, like, you know what I'm saying? But
and I think a lot of these are they're updated to the 21st century. Because each one of these domains, it's amazing how I read them and I saw, just like true science fiction fantasy should be, it points the finger right directly at us.
Yes.
Almost every one of these domains. I don't necessarily the Darkon doesn't do as much, but some of the other ones really get into the one with the werewolf and chasing after the hunger for fame, the hunger for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm like sitting there going, "This is social media. It's social media told in a dark fantasy setting,
Right.
but it's that idea of being popular."
Right.
There's the other ones where it's all about, and we're going to get to one, and about
Let's say your favorite
decadence.
one.
What's that?
I said one of your favorite ones.
Which one?
Uh, the Cinderella one.
Oh yes, yes.
Yes.
Oh, we no, I don't. Have we got that? Are we getting that one tonight?
We're getting to that one tonight, Mike.
Okay, good.
if
Yes.
we can ever actually get around to talking about the domains
know.
and not just talking
Okay.
about the existential dread that domains entail.
True. Let's go. Okay, let's go with Darkon.
But yes, I kind of I definitely wrote down in my notes, like, I like the idea of kind of asking the question of what does it take to save a domain of dread? Is a domain of dread worth saving? Is that something that you should even work towards?
Right.
So I could very easily foresee myself running some stuff in this version of Darkon, because I'm that kind of person.
Yeah, and if you've got the heroes, the true hero characters, then their idea is maybe not save the domain, but you've got to save the people.
Right.
That's the problem, is you have destruction going everywhere. So if you can't get them out, you've got to save the domain just so you can save the people, because it's not their fault that Aslan took a hike.
Yeah. And it's just that whole question of, can you save it? If you can, how and what will it cost you? Like, even if you are a true heroic character,
yeah,
I mean, if you're doing it right, it's gonna cost you.
Yeah.
I'm about to say, Kestrel just put in the chat, throw the party into a scramble deciding whether they choose the right alignment.
Yeah.
So that whole question of, if you're technically doing evil with good intentions, is it really evil or is it really good?
And what is your final goal, and can you escape the judgment that's going to come, because decisions they have consequences. And so are you going to, maybe one of the characters has to, even the lawful good paladin has to make that decision to become the Dark Lord or whatever. I mean, that's
and I see just so much potential in Darkon.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, Tactless Crow. Do the means justify the end? And all of that. I've been watching a lot of, YouTube videos with debates between, Christians and pagans and atheists on morality, so that's kind of where my headspace is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's having any effect on, I'm just ooh, let's talk about, the morality of doing the thing. But yes, I could easily foresee myself writing some very fascinating adventures in Darkon with some very fascinating questions. But of course I have to find the right party to do it with me, because I couldn't. Right. And that's kind of the unsung thing that I feel like is not talked about enough, is that you really do have to have the right party for the adventure you're running. And so if I were to run what I want to run in Darkon, I would be going to my players and telling them, okay guys, this is the game I want to run. Is this the game you want to play? And if the answer to that question is no, then one of two things therefore must happen. I either need to go back and find a game that the party wants to play, or I need to go and find a new, find some different people to run the game with. Because we kind of act sometimes like D&D should be like a one-size-fits-all, like every adventure should appeal to everybody.
Right.
And that's really not the case. But
so that was okay. So let's go to
Dementlieu.
Which this was the one. This is I thought, oh, this is really kind of spooky. And then we get to the story of Cider de en and her story, and all I could think is, oh my gosh, it's Cinderella on acid. It's because it's her story.
It's that
Until
whole, yeah, it's that whole like the whole fractured fairy tale, like
yeah,
what if it all went wrong
yeah,
type thing,
and
and I
right,
love
everything
it.
goes right until midnight, and as soon as midnight happens, that's when everything goes
Yeah,
wrong.
the poison is released, all of the other guests perish,
Yeah,
and
you
the
find out that
truth
she's actually her brother.
the
She's
truth
actually the
comes
prince's
out.
brother,
Ugh.
and or the prince is actually her brother, and all this. It's like, whoa, whoa, this is just wrong. And it made the only problem is that's a great backstory.
Yes.
I don't know if you would ever, because unfortunately, so many things happen with the DM. The DM knows it, and no one else would ever know it. And I don't know if anybody else would ever know this story. You would have to find some way to tell this story within your game.
You
Um,
the whole context info dump type
yeah,
thing. Yeah. Um yes, it is very Kestrel, it is very much oh my gosh, my girlfriend really loves that game. The oh my gosh, what's the title of it? Of course, I'm also just kind of sitting here sometimes just thinking about Franbo. Franbo just lives rent free in my head. Yes, yes, Alice. Well, so
oh,
there's Alice Madness Returns, which I believe is the sequel. But because there's two games in the series, and I think the first one might just be called like Alice. Yeah, and then the second one is like Alice Madness Returns, but it's Alice in Wonderland, but dark and creepy. I mean,
well, like Alice in Wonderland isn't already dark and creepy.
there's more
I,
blood.
I mean,
There's more
there are
blood.
so even in the Disney one, I was watching that when I was. Of course, I might have also had some mental, some things going on as well.
Some
It,
undiagnosed mental
well, no,
illnesses.
just some medicinal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking the whole time, why aren't you running in fear? She just turns around and goes, "Oh, how rude," and then moves on. And I'm
Oh
like,
dear.
no, no, that's horrifying. Why are you not running away?
I just remember there was like a live action version like in the early, this was before the Tim Burton version. So it's not the Tim Burton
Mm,
version. There's
right.
one from like the early aughts, and they did have the Griffin in it, and of course the Griffin and the Mock Turtle, and just
Yes.
beautiful soup. There's just a song about beautiful soup, and that's all I remember. It was just okay.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
my cousin's
And
favorite version.
I'm surprised they didn't do Alice in Wonderland in somewhere in this, but I think it's already spooky. You could do one.
You could. And that's
Um,
so that I would say is actually my favorite thing about Dementliu. Not just the fact that it's Twisted Cinderella, but it really shows you that you could turn just about anything into a domain of dread.
right.
Because this literally, like in my notes, I kind of put, so this is Cinderella plus Mask of the Red Death.
Yes, very much
So,
for Mask of the Red Death,
yeah,
which is my
it's,
first thought as well when I was reading before I got to the Cinderella story. This is Mask of the Red Death. It's the aristocracy trying to pretend that we are so much wealth and
mhm.
so much status that the plague cannot touch us, and we have so much wealth and status that if we don't try to even pretend that we have the wealth and status, again, pointing a finger at our own society in trying to be like the Joneses.
Everybody, every gotta be the next Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, and it's there. There's a reading this one. I kind of went, oh, this is real close to home, especially in this country.
Well, I mean, we're just coming off of a year of collective trauma related to a plague, so
Yes, yeah, where half of the country denied its existence. Yes,
exactly. See,
yeah,
continued on partying like usual, and then the rest of
yes,
us, yeah, yeah. No, it is very much one of those. I definitely, you can really see the inspirations behind it and see where they were coming from and
mm,
ideas about where to take it from there.
yeah.
So I kind of also put down, like, kind of if you're looking for more inspiration about, like, what sort of adventures to run in Dementilou, definitely look to the poetry of, like, Edgar Allan Poe, but
Yeah.
also the films of Vincent Price.
Yes.
Because I had an idea, because if I remember right, there's like there's a wax museum in somewhere in there, and I almost want to run something, very much, House of Wax.
Yeah. See, that would be good, and just scary because again, there's so much psychological
That was my
horror.
girlfriend Kestrel. She was letting us know the dinner's ready.
Oh, I couldn't even hear that.
Surprise! Yeah, I'm surprised you heard that. But yes, I definitely feel like it's a land with a lot of potential,
Hmm.
and I love and I love that it's definitely one of those, again, because it's very easy to see all of the pieces that went into the creation of it.
Hmm.
It kind of makes it easy for you to figure out where to take it. But not just that, it gives permission for you to go out there and look at other things and other types of stories, and asks you, hey, figure out how to twist this.
Right.
So
So let me go on to Falkovnia, which I just
Falkovnia.
this was great. Again, another disaster horror, just like Darkon, where it's falling apart, but not for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
But
Darkon is falling apart from the inside. Falknovia is falling apart because of threats from the outside that
right,
keep coming in. Which, I don't know. I don't know. For me, Falknovia, like, didn't really trip my trigger,
hmm,
but that might just be because I'm exhausted of zombies.
I understand that. I got exhausted of zombies a long time ago,
Because
so I didn't.
I just feel like there's been such an influx and inflow of zombie material
Yeah,
since, you know 2009-ish.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, ever since the popularity of Walking Dead, it's just nothing but zombies. But I also thought that what made this one interesting, what I loved about it was near the end, the mechanics on running the siege of Lakehar,
Mm-hmm.
where usually in a lot of these they give you ideas on how you'd run them. There's some ideas that you can get. This one really kind of ran you through. Okay, how would you as a DM run this? No stats or anything. You don't need. You can look up stats and you can throw in
You can go
monsters.
get those.
But how do you do this? At what point does this happen? At what point does this happen? And it really helps a DM is going, well, I'd love to run the siege, but I'm not going to touch that because there's just too much mechanics that I don't know anything about. And I love that in this book they go, okay, we know this is the part you're going to have trouble with as a DM, so we are going to walk you through that. Again, stats, we don't need Vledska's Dracov's stats. We don't. She's a death knight, whatever, or
Whatever.
she's a knight. That's fine. But running you through the mechanics that you would not normally do as a DM, I thought that was incredibly clever.
Yeah.
So if you do decide to do this one, at least you've got a good storyline. You are thrown into this and you're either enlisted or you are drafted or you volunteer. One of
Yeah.
those three things
Yes,
is going to
exactly.
happen.
This is the one. This is the one more than any of the other domains. I kind of put down, like, I do agree with you. I like how it broke down the siege and, like, how
Mhm.
best to kind of handle doing the siege, because that really is the heart and soul of this whole, like, that whole area.
Yeah.
And I know, at least for me, that kind of, to me, is one of the weaknesses of 5th edition, because it's leaned so far into role play and storytelling. There are certain things that do kind of suffer, which I feel large scale combat is the
Yes.
one
Oh,
thing that
yes.
suffers. Now, granted, D&D itself isn't really meant for large scale combat, cuz
No.
initially what Gygax wanted to do was D&D only takes you so far, and then you're supposed to graduate to running war games.
Right.
Like that was his whole thing. I mean, chainmail itself was the question of, we have rules for running mass combat with all of the different war games that exist, but we don't really have anything for micro combat. Right. Just one guy versus one guy. And that's was like the original kind of question for D&D, is how do you simulate one-on-one combat? And then it just turned into, dungeon exploration, and now again it's a very story-driven, role-play heavy type of game, and so that does make it hard to simulate big sieges, to simulate big bombastic battles and make them run in a nice way. So I did admire that, how the siege mechanics definitely give you some good tools on how to properly simulate
for your characters.
For the characters and
for the characters, because there's all these other things going on. How do you make your character do something? I'm stealing. If I ever have a situation where I've got a castle that's being under siege,
fortified castle under siege. Yeah, no, it's good.
It's great. It's great. You go, okay, so this happens, or this happens, so this happens. And instead of having these big armies against armies, it's how does your party deal with this anarchy that is going on all over you, this chaos that is unfolding, which you have no control over. All you can control is what little bitty world you're dealing with right now.
Exactly.
So that was wonderful mechanics, but that was the only thing that, zombies attacking
and the other thing for me is that, again, because of the way that this is set up, I could see myself running like a one-shot in Velknovia, but I do not see myself like running a long-standing campaign in there. That I feel is the weakness of this. Like all of the other lands, really, all the other domains really do lend themselves to running long-term stuff. But I don't foresee it. It definitely like, I just don't foresee somebody running a true long-term campaign. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure that there's someone out there who, like this is their jam and is about ready to, cart my head off on a pike because I'm talking crap about their favorite domain, but it's not for me.
No, but I also think that a lot of these, yes, you could certainly run an entire campaign 0 through 20 if you wanted to, and on many of these. But my favorite part of this book was I wanted to see, if I ever had to play in this, I would want to be a hopper from domain to domain. So I wouldn't want to spend that much very long in there. I want to go from domain to domain to experience each one of these. And this would be one of the ones where you could hop in, maybe third, fourth, maybe even fifth level, and just have some fun and then move on to the next one.
Right. Yeah. So Kestrel, one of the things that we've kind of been talking about, I see your comment, could it be utilized in another type of campaign? Oh, wait, it's not a one-shot already? No. Like, that's the thing about most of the stuff, or at least most of the domains of Dread in this book, is that they give you ideas for stuff, but they don't. There is technically an adventure, but it's a few chapters away. But this domain of Dread did feel like it had there's a very clear plot line for a one shot. Like I think I literally wrote down like my plot line for the one shot for this would be the characters come in on the night of the siege, participate in a first siege, and then they're stuck there for a month where they have to do tasks to get ready for the next siege, because it happens once a month, and then rinse repeat ad nauseum Eternia.
Yeah, which would be, yes, you could technically make that an entire campaign, but I think you would bore your players too fast. If your players are just basically doing a siege over and over again from 0 to 20, I don't think they're going to be all that interested. They're going to lose interest.
It's not as high concept as some of the other domains of Dread.
Yeah. Whereas
So,
the other domains, you would actually have things that you could go from 0 through 20 and never run out of ideas because there's so much going on in the domains.
mhm.
And that's why I want to move on to Harakir, which is
Yes.
exactly that. I felt like
Yeah.
Harakir was one of those, as I was reading, oh, I could make a campaign where the characters were born here, they live here, and they will die here. And I don't even mean
Yes.
necessarily die as in like TPK. I mean, they could grow old and die here because it's just, you've got so much in this world. I'm a big fan of the Egyptian mythos anyway. So the idea of creating an entire domain of dread that is based off of the Egyptian myths, and but without really, although it feels like it's taken from it, but you can see where it's been twisted by the Dark Lord to
Mhm.
become something different, something that he himself has just twisted and so wonderfully. And you look at the map of this place,
Oh.
it's
Oof.
phenomenal. There's so,
Oof.
I was like, oh, I want to go there. Oh, I want to go there. Oh, I want to go there. It's great. And I was thinking about these vast deserts with scarce water. All I can think of is Dune.
Mhm.
you know,
Little
and
little bit
really,
of
how do you?
little bit of Stargate, a little bit of Dune, a little
Yes,
bit.
very, very. So you've got the fantasy, the myths, you've got the sci-fi. There's a whole bunch that you could do with it. And also, one of the other things that when it talks about being scarce water, usually one of the things that's kind of written off in 5e Dungeons and Dragons is the idea of provisions,
Mhm.
food and water,
Mhm.
which, it's like, oh, well, you don't have to take food and water. It'll be fine. There's a town right around the corner. Well, what if you're in a world where you really have to worry? You've
Mhm.
got a canteen of water. Now go across the desert.
Right.
Okay, half the day's over. You're out of water.
Yeah.
What now?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those I've played around in my head with the potentiality of actually running a campaign where it did matter. Like
Mm,
where there was a question of okay, you have to track your resources, which
yeah.
you've got to track your water, you've got to track your food, you've got to figure out how to get water and food because it's kind of one of those things that the mechanics technically exist, but most of the time, again, because we have gone to the much more narratively story driven type thing
Mhm,
where we don't worry about food, we don't worry about water because it just drags down the story.
mhm.
I think this would definitely be one of the places where
Wow.
I would really love to play with that.
Yeah. And Kestrel is most campaigns he's been in have it made it mandatory, especially for food. And you're right. And I'm trying to do that with my Saturday night group, but we've got a druid who then did good berry,
Between yeah, it's like
and which
between
means
yeah,
everybody pop a berry and you have your food for the day. You don't have to worry about it. And I'm like,
yeah.
oh, well, so much for
Between
that.
between Goodberry and then I know druids can take it and I think clerics can do it too. It's like a first or second level spell, create food and water.
Yeah. And my pal and Gideon has it. Gideon has create food and water. I've
Yeah.
never used it yet, but darn it, we're about to go through a desert. So who knows?
It might be yeah, that might be one of those things cuz again like and that's also one of the things about like Red Dirt D&D is we're a narrative podcast. So it's like as soon as I start pulling out the hardcore survival mechanics, like that turns us into a crunchy
Yeah.
granola
Yeah,
podcast and
it's really hard to do.
it's
But you're right,
really
Kestrel.
hard.
It's really hard. But they're about my Saturday night group's about to go to the Isle of Dread. So
It's
if
really
they're
hard and it's
watching,
also not that fun. Like I can kind of understand it maybe like in a video game that can kind of remind you it's like hey did you do the thing,
yeah,
but for D&D like a lot of times there's so much time that just gets truncated
hmm,
because it's like you travel for a day and nothing interesting happens,
right,
you know because if you're having a random encounter every single day, like that gets a little tedious and then it's no longer a random encounter.
right. Right.
But it's, yeah, there's almost, I personally kind of feel like in tabletop role playing games there is technically no reason to have a quote unquote hunger or thirst mechanic,
Right.
just
I
because
th- I think it's
it's not
important
that
to
kind of
have,
game.
yeah, think about the resources, but I don't think it's necessarily, it depends on what you're right, Kestrel. It depends on what you're doing. Schultz had it. Schultz did have a little bit of it. You had to have your rain catchers. You had to worry about
Schultz,
water. You couldn't wear heavy armor. You couldn't.
yeah, like I
There were.
felt like, I kind of felt like Chult tried, but again, like, it's really, really hard to do survival mechanics in a narrative game.
Yeah,
Like,
and especially because you don't want your players to starve to death. You want your players to get killed by the Hydra. You know, so you go, well, okay. So you guys found some food in the forest. That's fine. But again, I think if you're going to do the desert, what about crippling diseases? Yeah. Well, and again, I just finished reading
mummy
the
rot.
Dungeon Master's Guide. I just finished reading the Dungeon Master's Guide and that whole section on diseases. Wow, those are fabulous. I love the idea of they're just traipsing through the sewers, no problem whatsoever. I'm like, no problem. You're traipsing through sewers.
Give me a con save.
Yeah, you might actually run into some sickness that you don't want to run into.
You're gonna need to go to the local temple and have the cleric look at that.
That's right. I think, but again, a lot of the spells that are out there now should take care of your problem. Just make sure your cleric or your druid doesn't die. Because again,
Make sure that paladin keeps at least some of those lay on hands, because with five
yes,
points of a lay on hands, you
takes
are
care of the problem.
you are taken care of.
Yeah.
I know I definitely kind of put, because I put in my notes, because the thing about Harakir is that somewhat similar to uh, Darkon, while Darkon's Dark Lord has literally checked out, um, Harakir's Dark Lord, Enkipat, has just kind of checked out mentally.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that's the feeling I got, was that he's basically kind of gotten to the point where he's just checked out. Like,
Mhm.
he's bored. He ain't got, and that also fits with technically what he's looking for, because again,
Right.
he's looking for his ka, which, if you know anything about Egyptian thought process, the Egyptian soul had no less than 5 different parts. The two major ones that everyone kind of talks about are the ka and the ba, which the ka itself is literally basically translates into animating force. It's your vitality. It's the thing
Mhm.
that keeps you going. And of course, Enkipat has lost that.
Right.
So it really does show that, like, I just get the sense that, like, as a Dark Lord, he's just so listless and, like,
Right.
doesn't care. But then as soon as you can give him a taste of, hey, we've got some clues, we might be able to find the thing you want, then that's
Mhm.
when he perks up. That's when he
Yeah.
takes notice. And I don't know, there's just something about that appeals to me, in the sense that it's like, the adventurers come in and they get tasked with finding the MacGuffin, and I don't know. I just have this vision in my head of him, like, sitting in his throne, just like slumped against it, and like you think he's dead at first,
Yeah.
and then it's like, oh crap, he's moving.
And I love, and also because you're absolutely right. It's mainly the reason he's having this problem is because he's chosen to live forever, and he is immortal. And again, very much another domain of dread that points to our own society, in our own seeking out for eternal life, which we've always done, but in today's society even more so. The idea of not growing old, the idea of being, I'm never dying. I mean, some of our biggest vampires, and there's all stories of people who live forever. And what's really funny is I've always said this: it's always played by young people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you actually had a person who was 100 years old playing that role, even though they would look young, you'd see the tiredness in their eyes because it's just after living a certain amount of time, you get tired. And so
Yes.
you could really play this of he's just worn out. What could you do for a man, a creature, technically, who has
At this
seen and
point,
done everything? Yeah, who has
yeah,
seen and done everything.
he's seen it all. He's done it all. There's really nothing that he longs for so much as sweet, sweet oblivion. Because that
Yeah,
is one of the things that like it says like in talking about how to properly role play him and talking about like what he wants. He wants to literally like that's the thing. He has to find this last piece of his soul so that he can die. And he doesn't even care what happens to him like
right.
after death cuz that's one of the big things in Egyptian cosmology is you know at the end of the day you stand before the gods and they weigh your heart lighter than a feather, you're free to go and you continue to live on heavier and your soul gets completely devoured with absolutely no hope. You're just gone. You are
Yeah,
a non-entity anymore. He's gotten to the point where he's like, I don't care if that's what happens to me. I just got to go.
yeah. But that's not how he started out. He started out wanting to live forever, and now
He
he's
wanted
made
to
that
he
choice.
wanted to rule, he wanted to reign, he wanted to bring order to his world. And now that he's, for the most part done all of that, he's done.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
And the
he's
dark
done.
powers won't let him die, and it's a great. And then you've got an entire world that you could go adventure in. So many. I mean, I would love to go see the Sands of Sute, those two mighty sandstorms. Oh,
Mhm.
that just looks. But oh, you could put so much in there, and there are so many great creatures and monsters that you could throw in here. I just, yeah, this is one of those where you could take them all the way through a campaign
Mhm.
and really have. But it's also a good one where you could just throw them in, and you've got to
Yep.
do something and then move on.
Here
But
you guys go, do the thing, and then get out.
yeah, that's
um,
really good. I really enjoyed this one a lot.
mhm.
Reading it, and again, I'm a sucker for any Egyptian mythos.
anything vaguely, anything with a
Yeah,
vague Ankh shape on it, you're all over it.
yes. Well, this is his first name, Octopod. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, that's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's wonderful. I love the kind of demented way he's recreated the Egyptian gods. It's
Yes,
just really, really good.
recreated gods in his own kind of dark image and
Yeah.
dark imitation of what the Egyptian gods actually stand for. Oh, I love it so much.
And what
Um,
would be a good Egyptian adventure without going to the necropolis?
right?
I mean,
If there isn't a place literally called the City of the Dead, you're doing it wrong.
that's right.
Okay, just
Everyone, okay, pack it up. We're going to the necropolis,
going to
guys.
Acropolis, guys. If you don't have a guy played by Oded Fair with facial tattoos, then you're not doing it right.
That's right.
So Kestrel, to address your comments about if we have talked about having a Dark Lord as a potential DM controlled NPC, that was something we kind of addressed because that, like, chapter 2 of Van Richten's guide is all about the Dark Lord. So, because that's the thing. Crow,
Right.
I
Yeah.
love you. I love you so much. Yeah, bring me back a thigh and a breast and um but yeah, so part of the thing about the Domains of Dread is that really they are like you don't have a domain without a Dark Lord.
Right.
As we were talking about earlier in Darkon, where the Dark Lord is gone, and so therefore, what are the consequences of the Dark Lord being gone? The Dark Lord should be a DM controlled NPC that should, again, like, and I'm kind of reiterating a point that I put back in
Yeah.
there, when we talked about chapter 2, is that your Dark Lord shouldn't be mysterious, cloak and shadows, no one knows who he is the night. No. Like, I honestly like when I run Barovia, I literally have it where like a lot of places have the portrait of great dear beloved leader.
Mm.
And as much as my Barovians fear Strahd, they also venerate him because the only way to keep Strahd off your back is to keep him happy. So yeah, your Dark Lord should be a controlled NPC and should be a presence throughout the game.
Yeah, and your players should interact several times, if not at least a couple of times before, and they don't necessarily have to be a big battle at the end with the Dark Lord.
Mm-mm.
Um, you but being maybe invites them to dinner and talks about that a lot in this, and or you see them. Maybe there's a couple of them that I thought, oh, it would be neat to meet them as like just this street person
Yeah, you don't know
that
who they
you
are at first, and then
didn't
it
know
only
they
comes
were the
out
Dark
later.
Lord. Yeah. So the one with the mother who is the Green Hag,
Mm-hmm.
you could go, yeah, you could meet her, and she's just this old lady on the street, and you didn't know who she was. So there's so many ways you could play this Dark Lord, but you want that Dark Lord to interact because the Dark Lord is the domain.
Yes.
Without the domain, you don't have the Dark Lord. Without the Dark Lord, you don't have the domain. So
Yeah, that's
they should interact with the characters and should at times be almost horrifying to deal with this person. So playing
yes.
off on that, playing off of the fears of your characters, it's huge. And the way to do that, I think, is to introduce this character several times as an NPC.
Introduced early and often.
Yes.
Early and often are the two rules of a Dark Lord.
Yeah. As Tactical Scro said, because that helps make the Dark Lord a threat rather than just something ominous in the distance that the players don't have to worry about until later. Yeah. And Tactical Crow, you're exactly right. Tactless Crow, you're absolutely right. And not only that, think about, I think, this entire book, don't just think about this in the context of horror. Whenever you have a villain, you should do that with every one of your villains,
Well,
even in the
unless
non-horror
you're running a murder mystery.
Well, no, because even if you're running a murder mystery, the villain is the person who commits the murder. But if you're doing a murder mystery, you've met the person. You just don't know they're the murderer. If it's the butler, you've been met at the door by the butler. The butler's taking your coat and hat. The butler is, so.
Yeah, but I don't know. That would be a whole other conversation. We might have to talk about it sometime. For
But yes, I think
there are times there are I feel like there are definitely some times where you do need to do a little more cloaky and shadowy, but when it comes to this type of storytelling, when it comes to the stories that are being told with the domains of dread, because again, each domain is unique to its Dark Lord, right. So therefore, like, the Dark Lord colors everything about the land, whether they want to or not.
Unless they're, yeah.
But yeah. Unless they're Dark Lord, then they're always there. The entire place is a crime scene.
Yes or yes.
I mean, at that point, a Dark Lord doesn't even care that, like, they're like, yeah, I murdered them. What of it?
Yeah. Unless you get to there's one later on where the murderer has a problem with, but we'll get to that one. We'll get to that one next week, or maybe not. I don't know. We've been going through this so slowly, and I hope you guys are bearing with us because we knew this was going to take us a while, because we really wanted to explore not only what we thought about each one of these domains, but kind of how you would play them, how you would run them as a dungeon master, maybe even a little bit of how you would play them as a player. So it takes a little bit longer to discuss these, and I hope you guys are going to stick with us because I think it's really fun to be talking about this book that I have absolutely loved getting into. I'm reading it a second time now as I'm writing up notes and just finding out more and more stuff that if I don't create a domain of dread, I'm going to steal from this book a lot for just a regular, even a non-horror campaign. It's in there. All this stuff is in there. It's the best dungeon master centric book that Wizards of the Coast has put out.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with with everything that Michael says in regards to this book. Just, it has really been such a joy to go through it and to see what little morsels that it holds. And because that's, I mean, I know I've said it before elsewhere, but when you are a dungeon master, and especially if you're doing any sort of long-term, long-format type stuff, refresh yourself by stepping out and looking at other things and looking for inspiration in just about everything. You know, don't limit yourself just to the traditional, the traditional things that you would look at.
Right.
Start looking outside of, Tolkien or whatever.
Yeah.
Start looking outside of, and start questioning as to why is this monster the same way, the same time every time we see it? Mm-hmm. What can we pull in to make it new and interesting and fascinating again?
Yeah.
So,
your players will thank you.
Yes, your players will thank you. You will thank yourself. Because as I like to say, sometimes I just need some brain candy and some brain floss, just to keep things interesting up in there, keep the gray matter engaged.
Yes.
But all right, well, any final thoughts about what we've talked about today, Mr. Cross?
No, I really love the fact that they put these domains in, and really enjoyed it so far, and I'm looking forward to talking more about the rest of these domains, because they get weirder and they get even more fun. And again, the way that they point a finger right back at us, like any good fantasy sci-fi should, I think excellent job, and players and DMs are really going to enjoy this. I'm looking forward to books and adventures, even in the OGL, something, other stuff being put out by other writers besides Wizards of the Coast on these domains, and I'm looking forward to seeing those come out, like on DM's Guild or whatever.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to kind of go onto the DM's Guild within the next, again, like the next 6 months or so, as we start to get into, because I do believe that they are releasing, if I remember right, there's supposed to be I don't know if it'll be like a mini season or what, but I believe that there are supposed to be some Adventures League based adventures being released based off of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. So I really want to see those and kind of see what's going to go on there. But well, we are all out of time for this episode. I'm going to go see what lovely, lovely food that my girlfriend has whipped up for dinner. Would like to thank you all once again for joining us on A&M Talk D&D. I'm Ash King.
I'm Michael Cross.
And if you aren't aware, Red Dirt D&D will be doing a live show this Saturday, June 19th. We'll start at noon Central Time. We are doing Titania's Midsummer Tournament, the continuing adventures of our holiday special characters.
You're not DMing.
I'm not DMing for once! I'm not working and I'm not DMing.
Kiri, who plays Poppy, is actually our dungeon master. So if you haven't checked that out yet, it is a lot of fun. She has been entertaining. It's been fun to watch her create these worlds, and it is going to be the same way. If you are excited about the Feywild coming up in September, check out this Saturday. We're going to the Feywild, baby.
We're going to, I think we've been making jokes. We're just going to the Feywild version of Coachella.
Yes. Woo!
Hey! And if you haven't yet, you can watch our previous holiday episodes, which include a lovely Christmas special and a Valentine's Day special. Those are available on our YouTube. If you go search for Red Dirt D&D on youtube.com, you will find us. You will find the archives of pretty much all of our Twitch stuff. So if you missed one of the previous episodes of A&M Talk D&D, you can find an archive there to watch some of the backlog, where, again, we have talked about other domains. We've talked about the other chapters of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. We're just stuck in Chapter 3 because Chapter 3 is so huge.
Yes, it's amazing. And remember, a new episode of Red Dirt D&D drops tomorrow.
Whoop, whoop.
So make sure and share with your friends.
What number is that one, Michael?
Episode 49.
Episode 49.
A blast from the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is all for us. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.